this presentation with everyone. Just going to share my screen here. Perfect. All right. Everyone can see the screen, I'm hoping. Julie, that looks good.
Yes.
All right. So just a little brief overview of what we're going to cover today. So looking at understanding ergonomics, a little bit of information about that, some common ergonomic issues that we see in the workplace, how to set up your ergonomic workstation, and some ergonomic practices and processes, as well as implementing these solutions. So, what is ergonomics? And basically, ergonomics is the science of fitting the job to the person and adapting the work environment to the needs of the person that's working within it. So, more and more, especially as we're working from home or spending more time in our offices at our desks, it's really important that we focus on ergonomics to promote the health and safety and to optimize our productivity in the workplace. And in doing that, we're going to really reduce the risk of injury. So I wanted to start today by a little stretch break. We're going to do two of these throughout the meeting. Most of you have probably been at your desk for the majority of the morning, and it's really important to be taking stretch breaks throughout the day. Generally, I recommend setting a timer and doing these about every 60 to 90 minutes. And I'm happy to share these exercises with you later so that you have them as well. Setting a timer is really important for them. So we're going to start with some upper back extension. So what you're going to do is you're going to place your hands behind your head and you're going to extend your upper back, and we're going to hold this for 20 seconds. You can take a deep breath in and exhale. Deep breath in. Exhale. You can use the top of your backrest if you need to kind of hinge over a little bit to give a little added stretch. And then what we're going to do is a seated back rotation. So we're going to, if we're in our chairs, we're going to put one hand on our side, the other hand either on the back of our chair or behind our back, and we're going to rotate our body towards the side of the room, and we're going to hold that for 20 seconds as well. So again, remembering to take a deep breath in, exhale. Deep breath in, exhale. I'm going to go to the other side now. Same thing, arm on the side of the leg. Deep breath in, exhale. Deep breath in, exhale. You're going to do some neck rolls. So large circles, feeling a gentle stretch. You do it for about 20 seconds in each direction. This is really going to help to loosen up the neck and shoulders. You've been tight from being at your desk all morning. And then we'll go in the opposite direction now, remembering to take some deep breaths as we do this as well. And then shoulder rolls. So we're going to go forwards. Then backwards. Good. We're going to go and do two more of the top ones. So we're going to go back to that upper back extension. And these stretches, generally, if you're doing them every 60 to 90 minutes, they're good to do for about 5 minutes, just to give your body a bit of a break and a stretch. And this will help to prevent further injury in the workplace. So make sure that your head is extended. Another deep breath in. Exhale. Deep breath in. Exhale. Back to those back rotations. Turn to the side. You can kind of have your arm over the back of your backrest or up on the top of it, depending on the amount of stretch that you're able to handle. Deep breath in again. And exhale. Deep breath in. Exhale. The other side. Deep breath in. Exhale. Deep breath in. Exhale. Good. All right. So, what are some things that can happen from having bad ergonomics? These are just a few of the many long term implications of having an improper workplace setup. So, we definitely see a lot of musculoskeletal injuries that are happening, carpal tunnel syndrome. Some of these you may have already experienced or maybe starting to experience. Certainly, fatigue is a huge one, not just mental fatigue, but our physical fatigue when our body is in an improper position for a long period of time. Sick building syndrome comes from being in a work environment where we actually start to begin to get sick from the environment that we're in. Neck pain, back pain, shoulder strain, all very common and certainly the most predominant injuries that I see in the workplace. Headaches from strain, whether it's neck or shoulder strain, and then eye strain that happens when our monitors are not at the appropriate distance. Repetitive strain. So certainly if we're doing a movement in a repetitive fashion, or we're holding a position for a long period of time, that's improper, and then obviously increased stress. So some of this probably looks familiar, and this is going to kind of outline where some of that discomfort comes in. And we're going to break these down into each different category, but this is what some of those aches and pains is going to look like. So in our upper back and neck, this can come a lot of times from our chair, our monitor, or the position of our documents are not in the appropriate position. The other thing that tends to happen is when we're using a phone. If we're using a cell phone, a lot of people have a tendency of holding the phone over their ears and holding it against their shoulder while they're typing. And this can obviously cause a lot of strain. So using a headset is really important. If you don't already have one, I would highly recommend obtaining one. Shoulder and elbow discomfort. So this can either be from reaching in improper directions, or it can be if your height and keyboard are not at the appropriate distance. So certainly having a keyboard tray so that you have it at the appropriate height is going to be really important. And again, we're going to break these down into key points in other slides. Lower back discomfort, probably the most common thing that I'm seeing. A lot of the time, it's because our chair is not set up properly, or you're not taking regular posture breaks throughout the day. The other thing is that a lot of chairs, especially on the cheaper end of the spectrum, don't have a lot of lower lumbar support. And it's really essential that we have that lower lumbar support. Sometimes we can get lower limb muscle cramps and aching. This can be if our chair is not at the appropriate height. Sometimes we're crossing our legs or we're sitting on our legs. As you can see from the photo, he has his feet propped up on the casters of the chair. This is obviously going to cause a lot of strain as well. Sometimes if we don't have enough space under our desk, if there's other things under there, that can cause us to cramp up our lower extremity as well, and that can cause a lot of discomfort. Wrist and hand discomfort. So this can come from whether we're at an improper keyboarding positioning, whether our mouse is in the wrong position, or if there's too much of a slant to our keyboard. And then the last but not least, eye strain, burning eyes, headaches. So lighting plays a really big role here, as does our proximity to our computer screen. So we're going to go through some different pieces for that. So what are the benefits of good ergonomics? Our body remains healthy. We have less injuries that happen, not only in the workplace, but also outside of the workplace. Our accuracy is improved. We have less absences from work and less stress. We feel better and more comfortable. We're way more productive, less fatigue. And in the long term, it saves a lot of money. So if we have a really good ergonomic setup, we're not going to end up off work or in treatment for a bunch of chronic problems. So the earlier that we can get in to prevent and set up a workplace in a proper ergonomic setting, the less implications that will come. And then obviously reduce strain that comes. So these are the most common ergonomic issues. The biggest one is always the chairs. And so if chairs aren't adjusted to your height and preferences, this can lead to really improper, or can lead to a lot of discomfort, but a lot of improper and poor postures. So this can be if your chair is too high or too low, not enough lumbar support, inadequate seat depth. And then when we look at our desk setup, so either they're too high or too low, this can cause strain in our arms, our shoulders, our necks. If they're too cluttered, then this can force us to reach excessively. And when we're reaching excessively for essential or non-essential items, this can cause a lot of discomfort and injury. With our monitors, if they're positioned too high or too low, this is going to cause a lot of neck strain and discomfort. Monitors are not direct, if they're not directly in front of us, then this can cause a lot of eye strain as well and will reduce our productivity significantly. With keyboards, if they're not positioned appropriately, we're certainly going to have a lot of strain that happens and discomfort. Keyboard trays, if you do or don't have them, oftentimes if people have their keyboards up on their desk, they're actually too high, and this can cause a lot of excessive reaching that's unnecessary. And a keyboard tray is generally a pretty quick thing to add, but just making sure that it's in the proper height. And then making sure that your mouse is positioned in the appropriate position as well. Temperature and humidity is something that oftentimes we don't think about in the office, but it can have a huge impact not only on our comfort level, but also how productive we are. So if it's too hot or too cold, or if there's not enough ventilation, we can feel tired, we can feel fatigued, it can impact our respiratory system and our energy levels quite significantly. So if you are in a home environment, it's nice to have a window open or have some fresh air flowing throughout. But also taking those breaks to get out and have some fresh air throughout the day is really essential. Prolonged sitting without enough breaks certainly is going to lead to an increased risk of having musculoskeletal disorders. And it's really important to have appropriate breaks throughout the day. Setting timers is really important for this piece. It's so easy to get busy with work and into a flow, and next thing we know, 4 hours has gone by and we haven't taken a break. So setting a timer on your phone, whether it's for 60 to 90 minutes where you're doing a stretch or you're getting up and going and grabbing a glass of water, just having a break away from the screen is really important. And then improper, poorly designed workplace stations and equipment. So non-adjustable chairs, workplace layouts that don't accommodate for these principles. And so if we can kind of manage each of these issues, we'll have less concerns as they go. So how do we improve our workstation? So we're going to go through each of these things individually and kind of do this as a more active approach to looking at your workstation. A lot of these things are simple fixes that you'll be able to manage and do on your own. Some things do require, an OT assessment or further assessment, but I'm hoping that you can take some pieces from today that will make some immediate that will help immediately. So checking your posture, and we're going to go through all these individually, but adjusting your chair, assuming or ensuring the proper desk height and chair height, making your workstation fit you and what your job actually entails. So making sure that those things that you use all the time are within the closest proximity to you. Looking at the lighting of your workplace is really important as well. So much of the time when we're working in office setting, there's, a lot of very obnoxious fluorescent lighting, and that can have pretty long-term implications to us as well. Organizing the workstation to improve your job design, and then using footrests and neutral keyboards. So first, we're going to look at our posture. So I want you to kind of look at your posture, and we're going to go through the checklist. I think Julie sent out a checklist that you can have for your own workstation that we'll work through kind of as we go. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to print it out. If you haven't, it's a resource that you'll have for future. And I highly recommend taking that checklist and every couple of months coming back to it, because it's very easy for us to kind of go back into our old habits and routines and postures. And so sometimes setting a reminder, even if it's in your Outlook calendar, to go back and think about, am I actually making these changes, and have I done it, and am I kind of following through with that? Because obviously the more that we do, the less we'll have injuries at work. So forearms at a 90-degree angle with our elbows, making sure that our shoulders and elbows are relaxed, and whether we're leaning our elbows on our elbow rests on our chair. Otherwise, they're going to be positioned on your keyboard tray. Making sure that your wrists remain in a neutral position and posture. So much of the time in our workstations, especially if our keyboards are too high, they tend to be in a flexed or extended position. And this can cause a lot of strain and end up with carpal tunnel and all kinds of other injuries, and, can start in one area and then lead to neck and shoulder strains. So making sure that our wrists remain neutral is essential. Making sure that our head is over our shoulders and in a relaxed position. Our eyes are going to be looking slightly downward, and we'll go through the degrees of what that looks like. Our backrest, making sure that we have adequate low back support for our pelvis, and the natural curve of our spine. So thinking about your chair, and we'll go through some chair techniques here in a little bit, but a lot of chairs don't have adequate lumbar support. And it's really the most essential piece next to the height of the chair that we really want to be considerate of. There are some temporary options for putting some lumbar support in there, but long-term, it's important to have a chair that you can adjust the lumbar support, and sometimes even adjust how much lumbar support you have, because all of our natural curvatures of our spine are going to be different. Our thighs want to be resting with about a 90 to 110-degree angle. This will vary a little bit depending on whether our feet are on the floor or feet are on a footrest. Ideally, if you are using a footrest, it's nice to have one that you can kind of alternate the position of your feet throughout the day. But it's really important, and I think especially if you're shorter like I am, most computer chairs, my feet are not touching the ground. So it's really important to have adequate feet support so that you're not up on your tiptoes or tucking your feet on your casters of your chair. So this is part of that worksheet that was sent out to you. So I want you to kind of go through this and actually look at your workstation and check these things off. And again, some of these are recommendations that you can make very easy adjustments to. Others may require a little bit further assessment and recommendations. So I want you to look at your station and think about, when you're using your keyboard and your mouse, are your forearms at a 90-degree angle? So place your hands on your keyboard and your hand on your mouse, and either check that off as a check mark or an X. Then I want you to look at your wrists. Are they in a straight position when you're using those, or are you noticing there's a little bit of flexion that's happening? This is the easiest one to change. When we look at our keyboard tray, a lot of times there's feet on the top of our keyboard. And so the easiest way of actually changing that is to remove the feet. So just clip them back into your keyboard. And this will really help, because if we have our keyboard at that flex position, then our wrists are going to be flexed. So remove that tilt of your keyboard, and that should make a pretty big change immediately. As far as mouse goes, it's certainly important if you're using a laptop to not use the mouse option on the laptop keyboard. This really puts our wrists in a improper position and can lead to very significant and permanent implications. So making sure you're using an external key or external mouse, and also if you're using a laptop, that you're using an external keyboard. Next thing we want to look at is when we're looking at the screen, is your head upright? So that's to say, are you looking up or are you looking down? Ideally, what we want is that you're going to be looking at the top part of the screen, and the text on the screen is going to be where your eye level should be. So you shouldn't be eye level with the top of the screen, eye level with the top words on the screen. And we're going to look at our low back. So is our lower lumbar support supported by the curve of the chair? So, and is that, are we able to adapt that, move it up and down, or adjust it in any way? Some have a natural, just a little clip that you can slide the lower lumbar support up and down. Others actually have adjustable air so that you can kind of pump in how much lower lumbar support you need. Both sides of it can be beneficial. Sometimes using too much air can actually cause more strain. So you really want to make sure that you have it at the appropriate amount. Then we want to look at, are we able to sit without feeling pressure from our chair on our thighs or knees? So sometimes what happens, depending on the tilt of the seat, we can have pressure that either forms either right behind our knees or other places. And if there are pressure in those areas, then that can cause a lot of tension and can have some pretty long-term implications as well. And then our feet, are they fully supported by the floor or a footrest? Okay, so these are some tips for a chair and some adjustments that need to be taken. So if our seat does not adequately support our back, this is going to increase the fatigue. If it's too high, then our neck posture is going to be impacted, and it will also put pressure on the back of our thighs, like we were talking about before. If our seating is too low, we're also going to be in an improper position with our neck, but it can also cause us to sit with our knees that are slightly raised. And then this puts us out of that 90 to 100-degree angle. And this can impinge a lot within our core and our low back as well. If we're sitting for long periods of time, it's going to cause decreased circulation. So it's really important that we have the chair at the appropriate height for that. And then if our wrists are straight when we're using our keyboard on the mouse. So let's look at our chairs again. Are you able to adjust it when you're sitting on it? So generally there's a lever, and I'm sure most of you know this, the levers that raise and lower your chair. Generally they're on the right-hand side of the chair. So the first and foremost is, can you adjust the height of your chair? And so you want to adjust it to a height where you are at that 90 to 110-degree angle. Generally, it's about 15 to 20 inches in order to have a straight wrist posture. So you can kind of look at that and see. It's easy to take out a tape measure. Most of us have them at home or in the workplace to kind of see if we're at that appropriate height. And this will also be important when we look at where are we positioning our keyboard tray if you don't already have one. If you're using a footrest, does it have a non-slip surface? Obviously, this depends a lot on, are you wearing shoes or are you at home and maybe not having shoes on? It's actually important and actually quite helpful to wear shoes throughout the day, because that obviously gives us some foot support as well and prevents our feet from pronating. And does the foot support or the footrest support both of your feet? So really making sure that it's wide enough so that both of your heels are about 5 inches apart and that they're not too close together. Can we adjust it? So ideally, a footrest can adjust between 10 to 20 degrees. It's nice to adjust that angle throughout the day so that we're not in a sustained posture for too long. There are some really nice rocker footrests that kind of allow you to move them throughout the day that do stay in the position as needed. So I highly recommend those ones if you're in need of a footrest. And then is it stable? So if you are on one of those footrests that do rock, When you have them stable, does it continue to move or does it stay stationary? And then can we lower the backrest? So sometimes the entire backrest will move up and down. Other times it's just the lumbar support that's going to raise and lower. Um, Either of them are okay as far as options go, as long as you're able to adjust that lumbar support. The next we want to look at is the angle of our backrest and if that can be adjusted as well. So generally the lever for that is closer to behind the one that raises and lowers the seat. It's nice to be able to adjust that throughout the day. So making sure that you are in a neutral position. It's nice throughout the day. Sometimes if we kind of lean our body back a little bit, we definitely don't want to move our bodies too far forward and cause any compression. It will have an impact on our breathing and our digestive system. So staying as close to that 90 degrees as you can, the better. If your chair has armrests, it's really important that they're at a comfortable height. And generally the armrests can be adjusted as well. There's usually a lever on either side of them to raise or lower them. Some allow you to actually swing them away. But it's important that if we have armrests, that they aren't preventing us from being too far away from our desk. So if the height of our chair is, if it's at a certain height, then sometimes if we try to scoot our chair in, it will prevent us from getting as close to our screens as we need. So really trying to make sure that it's at a height that they'll ideally fit below your desk if needed, as long as your monitor is far enough ahead of you. Having a chair that has 5 casters is really important. It's more stable, so there's less likely going to be instability that happens. You've probably seen, you know, when there's a chair that has like 3 legs, sometimes people have like fallen off of them, or they're just not as stable. So having 5 casters is really important. Most standard chairs this day and age have 5, but some don't. So making sure that yours has 5. Is the upholstery made of a breathable fabric? So there's definitely a lot of people that enjoy having a leather seat, or one that kind of has heavier material, but a breathable fabric is actually more preferable. I don't tend to recommend any leather seats anymore, and most of the chairs that I recommend actually have a really good flow of air throughout them, and generally have a back that is a mesh back. And even a mesh seat that has some padding, but that can have airflow throughout, will actually keep the chair. You'll be able to keep it for a lot longer that way. We then look at, does the chair have a rounded seat edge versus a straight seat edge? So rounded is a lot better than straight. It prevents any impingement from happening as well. And then can we tilt the seat of our chair? So this is just kind of a summary of that again. So looking down at about a 30-degree angle. So our eyes are level with the text on the top of the screen, about 8 to 15 centimeters between the top of our knees and our keyboard tray. Our feet and keyboard tray is going to be between 64 to 75 centimeters from the floor. This is obviously going to be dependent on your height. So if you're taller, there's going to be more space there. 5-prong base, your seat height obviously adjusted to your height. The seat pan tilt is about 3 to 4 degrees, and you can change this throughout the day as well. The height of the backrest, so a minimum of 45 centimeters, so that we are hitting that lumbar piece.
Oh, you just froze, Christina. Am I frozen? Can anybody let me know if I'm frozen?
No, I can hear you. It's Deb Ryan, but
Hi,
the rest,
Deb.
I don't know what happened to her. It was
Um,
great.
Yeah, Christina. Let me just text her. Frozen. Technology.
Almost like she was bounced off the system.
Okay. See, I think you're right. So I think she'll have to come back in. Sorry, folks. And Christina's in Toronto doing this presentation from Toronto, where one would think they would have better internet than rural Nova Scotia. She's coming. Let her back in. You can all do your stretches. Do you have another little stretch break while you're waiting? If anybody has any questions while we're waiting for Christina to come back in, feel free to pop them in the chat now. A couple folks, here comes Christina. A couple folks did have some questions earlier when I sent out the notice, and some of the accessibility leads also had questions about
I'm back,
Terry.
sorry.
Hi, no worries. I was just about to lead a stretch break, but I also asked people to pop into the chat any questions that they might have for you right now while we were just waiting for you to get set back
Perfect.
up. Yeah.
Okay. Just gonna pop back into here and from here. Sorry about that. Technology. All right. I think I was on keyboard. Does that sound about right? I'm not sure where it froze, but
I think you were on this slide before.
armrests, maybe?
Armrests, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We've kind of briefly talked about the armrest, but making sure that that's helping to alleviate some of the stress in our shoulders and back. Your forearms should rest comfortably, and ideally, they're not preventing you from getting close enough to your screen. Keyboard trays. So we talked about removing the tilt on the keyboard tray. I often removed the keyboard rest as well. Oftentimes, the wrist rest can actually cause us to be in that tilted position as well. It's okay to use a wrist rest as long as you're still in a neutral position. So just really taking a look at your keyboard and making sure that your wrists are in a neutral position. Same with your mouse. So making sure that your mouse is aligned so that your wrist is neutral. Oftentimes we're coming at it from a side angle so that there's a little bit of an angle that's happening with our wrist. And this is going to cause a lot of tension in our wrists and end up in a lot of carpal tunnel or other chronic injuries as well. So this is a little overview of our organization of the workplace area. So ideally we have a primary work zone and then a secondary work zone. So within that primary work zone, we really want to focus on having our mouse, keyboard, and kind of the base of our computer within that primary zone. And then anything that we're using for shorter periods of time outside of that, whether it's on an occasional or a kind of more infrequent basis, are going to be in that secondary zone. So whether it's a document holder, our monitor, or our telephone.
Sorry, are you on another slide? You're still on 18 on the view.
It's not okay, let's no. Let's do
There we go.
There we go. Is that good?
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So this talks a little bit about lighting. So lighting is really important. It can cause a lot of eye strain in our workplaces. So making sure that the finish on our desktop is matte. Certainly if they're shiny, we're going to have a lot of glare and that can cause a lot of eye strain. The blinds in our windows actually make a pretty significant impact on the screen glare as well. So using vertical blinds or or curtains if needed instead of using horizontal. Using lighting, if you can, whether it's a lamp, instead of using fluorescent overhead lighting, will decrease the amount of strain that we have as well. Not too much white on the work surface that we are using, and then trying to use a matte finish on our walls and floors as well instead of a shiny surfaces. For monitors, oversized monitors can increase a lot of glare that we have. So making sure if we do have larger monitors, and a lot of us do if we're working kind of off of two screens, making sure that they're positioned away from windows so that we're not getting a glare from those as well. Becoming familiar with brightness and contrast is really important. So we can adjust those in our settings. And I'll talk a little bit about it later, but there is a really good filter called Flux Filter, and this can decrease that blue light that we feel on our screen that can cause a lot of strain. Using a light background, so light gray, really helps to minimize that glare on our monitor as well. And then making use of the color in the monitor as well to avoid some of the strain. So this just kind of gives a couple of color suggestions. So using several colors at a time, that can be really confusing for our brains. Really big color contrasts, your eyes don't tend to tire as quickly. Blue for small letters because the eyes can't really focus on blue. White on yellow is probably the hardest. It's really hard for us to differentiate that contrast. Yellow on green is a vibrating effect, and then opposite colors are generally really good combinations for our eyes.
Christina, we're still on slide 20. Sorry, I think when you
Yeah, I don't know why it's current slide.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's not.
Just in terms of your view.
Yeah.
Because what we're seeing is your view.
My view. Okay.
Yeah, so we're now seeing slide 23 that says stretch break number 2.
Okay. So you're seeing that now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But we still see all your thumbnails on the side as well.
Just so yeah. Okay. So let's go back to here. Let's make sure that you can see that. Is that on stretch break 2?
It is with the thumbnail
Okay.
still on the side. Yeah.
Thumbnail. I don't know how. Oh, hide the thumbnail. That one.
Nothing has changed in your screen, but we can keep going and just I'll let you know if we're off again.
Okay. Okay.
I think
I'm just
slide 22. We didn't see 22 when you were talking about colors.
okay. There wasn't really any photos on that, so it was okay. I'm mindful of time. Do we have time to do the second stretch break or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, perfect. So for our next stretch, what we're going to do is we're going to tilt our head to one side until we start to feel a pull on the opposite side of our neck. And you can add your hand to give it a little bit of an extra stretch. Sometimes you can also take your opposite hand and place it underneath of your body, and that will do an extra pull as well. And then we're going to switch to the other side. And then we're going to do a neck flexion. So we're going to place our chin on our chest until we feel a stretch in our neck. And if you want a further stretch, you can actually put your hands on top of your head and pull them down. And take a deep breath in. And exhale. Deep breath in. Exhale. Okay, now we're going to do a side stretch. You can do this one standing or seated. So you're going to stand with your feet shoulder width apart, place one hand on one hip, and then you're going to put the other overhead. Lean to the side. You can kind of push your hips out to the opposite side as you do this. We're going to hold that. You can take a deep breath. And then to the other side. Deep breath in. Exhale. For a roll down, you're going to stand up. You can do it seated as well, ideally standing, and you're going to slowly reach towards your toes. Deep breath in. Focus on feeling the movement in your spine. You can bend your knees slightly if you need to. And then slowly roll back up. Just want to make sure the slide changed there, right?
No, still on 23. Go to the next one.
I don't know why it's not showing you the new station, the new slide. I might just do it from this view just to, if that's okay. Then we don't have, okay. So we're going to go back to our little check points and look at our workstation review. So looking at your monitor, do you know how to adjust that monitor and your keyboard? Your document holder, if you're using it, is at the same height and viewing distance as your monitor. This way you're not turning your head and neck too much and that they're in that same neutral position. When we're editing on our screen, is the monitor directly in front of us. So if we're working off of two monitors, ideally the one that we are using the most frequently is directly in front of us, and the other one is only slightly off to the side. And then when we're importing data, if you're doing any sort of data importing, making sure that our documents are on a document holder and that we're not sustaining a neck posture that's going to cause increased strain as well. Tie the line on the top of our screen, so making sure that that's at eye level. If our screen tilts, making sure that it's neutral and that it isn't tilted too close to us or too far away. Looking at that distance, so making sure that we're about 20 inches away, our eyes to our screen. This can be adjusted. Some people like it a little bit further and closer, depending on whether you're using glasses or not. 13 to 28 inches is recommended, but 20 seems to be what's most comfortable for people. And then looking at the mouse and the keyboard being on the same level. So making sure if you are using a keyboard tray that you're not having the keyboard up high and then the mouse down low or opposite, making sure they're at the same position. And then making sure that you're reaching it without overstretching. Document holder, making sure again that that's close to you and that everything is within about 12 inches of your screen. Everything is within arm's reach so that you're not overreaching too far and that you're maintaining a comfortable position. Are the items that you're seldomly using, so maybe that's a tabletop phone, other items like that, that they're further away and that you're just keeping the items of most importance close to you. And then any large reference materials, keeping those near waist level so that you're not lifting overhead for anything that's really heavy and that you're keeping them close to you. Looking at the level of light, so making sure that you're not squinting in your workstation so that you have adequate light, but not too much, and there's not too much glare on your screen. Making sure that it's positioned so that everything is in your line of sight and that you have the brightness and contrast controls set up. And again, you can have this adjusted so that it goes through the hours of the day so that there's a little bit more light on your screen in the beginning of the day and it kind of starts to wean off towards the end of the day. And then when working at your computer, making sure you have enough light to read hard to see things. Whoops. There we go. So again, overview of the environment. Making sure that we have ergonomic equipment set up properly. If you are starting to notice a little bit of wrist strain, you can wear a wristband, and this will kind of be placed just below your elbow. And this basically adds as a second attachment point so that you have less strain. That's kind of to prevent long-term wrist damage. If you're starting to notice symptoms happening, an easily accessible document holder, a wireless headset, making sure you have posture and that you're taking breaks as needed, feet flat on the floor or on your footrest, monitor at eye level, clean surroundings and quiet environment, and then elbows and knees at a 90-degree angle. And this is just kind of a summary picture that we've already alluded to. And then this is just a brief summary. So taking those breaks, using those stretches, and we'll make sure that you get a copy of those stretches that we did earlier so that you're doing those throughout the day, maintaining a good posture and alternating between sitting to standing if you're able to. A 20-20-20 rule is a really good thing to consider. So basically every 20 minutes, we're looking 20 feet away from our screen for about 20 seconds. And this just helps our eyes readjust and decrease the amount of strain on our eyes, especially when we're on them for prolonged periods. And then, as I mentioned before, making sure that you're reviewing this setup every couple of months to make sure that no changes need to occur. We've kind of touched on all of these. At the end of the day, most of these things you're able to modify on your own, but if you do feel like you need an ergonomic assessment, most of you likely have coverage for occupational therapy assessment, so you can have those changes identified and recommendations put in place to help get some appropriate ergonomic equipment, and generally that's covered under your extended health benefits. And then, yeah, just making sure that you're organizing your workday to include lots of breaks and stretches throughout the day. Does anyone have any questions at all? I'm going to stop sharing this and come back to the chat and stop share. There we go. I don't know if there was any questions that were in the chat box. I couldn't see it as we were going.
I'll have a look. But Monica, is it Monica or Monica?
It's Monica, yeah.
Monica?
Hi, Christy. Thanks so much
Hi.
for the presentation. It was wonderful. I mean, I'm sure a lot of that we've heard before, but reminders are always good.
Yeah.
I want to ask you if you're aware of any companies that supply office furniture that are maybe designed for a more petite person. We know most things are designed for an average male body, and I find that no matter what, it doesn't work. And the employer is often saying, well, if we can't order and it doesn't exist out there, you got to make do with what you got, kind of thing. So are you aware of any companies doing that?
Yeah, I can actually send a list. I have a few vendors in Halifax actually, and there's a few online as well. But I can send out a little list of vendors that make smaller chairs. There's actually a big market for it, surprisingly, and so there are a lot of companies now are shifting into having smaller chairs and also like pediatric chairs for kids, because there's a lot of kids that are doing at home schooling as well. So yeah, I'm happy to share that list as well so that you can know where to go to for.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, so we will send out a copy of the stretches that Christina provided, as well as this list to everyone who's registered for the session. And Christina's coming back actually for 3 more sessions. So each session is going to build upon the last in terms of knowledge, and particularly around understanding accommodations and, you know, really, again, supporting our differences in the workplace so that we're able to do our jobs efficiently and not undergo any potential harms or further harms to ourselves.
Mhm.
Any more questions for Christina?
Thank you so much for everyone attending. I really appreciate your time. Sorry for the malfunctions of technology sometimes, but
Yeah, no worries. But it's great that we're all able to gather here like this today. So that's
absolutely.
really helpful. Yeah. And just as reminders, like, you know, it'd be great. I need to be doing this, putting those reminders in my, like, I don't know how, you know, either on my
Even
screen or my
Outlook calendar. Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, just to like give me a little ding, like the 2020 piece and looking away, because I do find at the end of the day, especially after having so many of these meetings and, you know, doing the work, that my eyeballs are burning. So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
you can set recurring reminders in your Outlook calendar as well. So you kind of just get a little pop-up reminding you to do it, and it's very helpful for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
great. Just a few, not questions really much, but people just thanking you for the information and finding the information very helpful. Stretches feel so good. Yeah, really, really simple stretches, but super helpful. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I do the one as well with the where you actually put your arm, like you sit on your hand with the neck, because
Yeah,
it helps
an
a lot.
added stretch.
Yeah, for those of us who do have neck injuries or added, trap tightness. So that's a good
Absolutely.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we have no questions, the next session that we have you for, do you remember I'd have to look. Do you remember the topic for the next one?
You can pull it up.
It's May 31st that I have you coming back.
Yeah. I think so. Next one is on design intervention. So looking at creating accessible workplaces and environmental and administration controls.
Super awesome. Yeah, it's always like even the little tips you gave today with the chair, because I have this new chair and we haven't had a chance to review it yet. So that was really good. I got to learn how to use a couple little features on my chair that I was wondering about. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, great. And just more thank you for the information and the stretches. Monica said Monica said the stretches were much needed over where she was. So yeah,
Yeah.
reminders. Yeah, great. Okay.
Absolutely.
Somebody did ask a question. One of the accessibility leads had asked a question about adjustable chairs for accessibility for
Mhm.
folks. Yeah. So do you have any recommendations for that?
Yeah, I actually sent him a couple of links as well. So I'm happy to like alongside what I said with Monica, I can just send out a basically a little list of local vendors and yeah, just some places to look. Just really making sure that when you are getting a chair, it's actually best if you can go in and sit in a couple of them. Ordering online can be a little bit risky at times. And if you are going to order on times, making sure that, or if you are going to order online, making sure that you get the measurements right is really important because most chairs are not refundable. So if you can go in and sit in, there's a couple of places in Halifax that allow you to sit in the chairs and they have, kind of a space for that. So if you have the opportunity to do that, all the better. But I'll send out a list of places to look for chairs that are local.
Great, super. Thank you.
You're
Um,
welcome.
And so I'm curious for the folks on the call, like how many people have actually had OT assessments done, um, and what that experience looks like. So I actually had Christina come to my home office because my home office wasn't very well set up. And so Christina came to my home office to help me with my setup and the ordering of equipment specifically for my needs, and to really reduce like the strain from my ongoing injuries in my workplace. So I found that really helpful. We have another session coming now that all my equipment has arrived to get set up. So yeah, I'm hoping that a number of you have accessed your OT benefits to do this. And if not, maybe now you are inspired to do so.
I do have one question. It's Deb Ryan, and that is, I have a stand-up one I got a year ago, and I found it
Mhm.
very useful. I'm not sitting all the time, so I have figured out because I did have an assessment on how to adjust that over time. But
Mhm.
yeah. So what do you think of those type of units?
Oh, I highly recommend a sit stand station. I wish everyone could have them, and certainly they're not always feasible for everyone to have them. There are ways we can monitor or change our workstation to be able to sit and stand throughout the day, but I think everyone should have a sit stand station that's able to have that flexibility, and the amount of injuries it prevents is huge. Really important if you are using a sit stand station that you're using adequate foot like an anti-fatigue mat. Oftentimes people will be standing on, concrete or laminate, whatever type of flooring. So having an anti-fatigue mat is really helpful for that as well. But I highly recommend them. And if you have the opportunity to get one, I would definitely support it for
They're
sure.
not very money. They were $150. So it's
So you have a tabletop one, I'm guessing, like that
I-
you raise in.
yes, but other
Yeah.
people just got a simple desk will go up and down, but mine's just a tabletop
Mhm.
and it works.
Yeah, the tabletop ones are great because you can actually, like move them throughout your home too if you're working from home. And obviously they're easy to pick up and move if you are changing your workplace spaces. But at the end of the day, having the opportunity to sit and stand, regardless of whether it's an electric sit stand station, an ergotron, or a tabletop one, they're all great options.
What's an ergotron?
An ergotron is like the station that you got that has a electric button that will raise and lower the entire workplace station.
Still in the
It's
box.
just a brand. Yeah, it's still in the box.
I have to put it together.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just a brand. It's probably the most common brand of electric sit stand workstations, and usually the most durable and long lasting. Yeah.
Great, super. I'll let you know
Yeah.
how mine works, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Christina, for this
Thank you.
presentation. And yeah, we'll send the additional slides with the stretches out for folks and the reminder to do your 20-20-20. And we'll look forward to having Christina back with us in about a month for part 2 of this learning session. Thank you so much.
Sounds great. Thanks, everyone.
Okay,
Take
take
care and have a
care.
great day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.